Hi, welcome back to another tutorial. And this time we're going to talk about Introduction to Internet Protocol version 6. Okay, so right now the ones that we usually use is the IPv4 or Internet Protocol version 6. And this lesson is going to introduce to you and give you a basic overview of what really is IPv6. Okay, so to start with an overview. So we need to be motivated that IPv6 is not actually going to give complexity in terms of learning, but actually it really is inevitable. It really has to be IPv6 in the future. Okay, so what is IPv6? It's a suite of protocols and standards developed to, first of all, is to provide a much bigger IP address. And because, as you all know, IPv4 is lacking in supply, so whether we like it or not, IPv4 is going to run out and there will be no more IP addresses available to be given to additional units. Okay, so we really have to go to IPv6. And to simplify the way that addresses are configured and handled by the internet hosts. So basically there was supposed to be an IP version 5, but it was experimental protocol. Okay, so it was called the internet stream protocol, which was never widely deployed. That's why we jumped to IPv6. Okay, why do we need IPv6? Okay, currently, okay, from this slide you can actually see this is the bottom line: insufficient addresses for IPv4. Okay. So currently we are 45% of the world's population are internet users, and this is set to rise, and most users require multiple IP addresses to cater for personal devices, such as needing its own IP address. Remember, the IP address that we're talking about that has to be reserved, okay, is the we call that the public IP address. Okay, it it cannot be used by other people. The ones that we use usually in our homes, when it passes through the router or our modem, is already a private IP address. Okay, but the ones that is reserved in the IANA, okay, is the public IP address. Okay, and once it is reserved for a particular unit, it cannot be used with others. Okay. So that's what we are doing right now. Okay, so sooner or later, it's gonna run out. IPv4 has approximately only 4.2 billion possible IP addresses, and IPv4 address pool is really insufficient to meet our global needs, which is rapidly, okay, rising up, and eventually you become exhausted. Okay, the evolution of IPv6, take note, the term here is not revolution. It's not it's not an invention, but actually it was an upgrade. It is an upgrade of the IPv4. So it's evolutionary, not revolutionary, created to correct some of the problems of IPv4, and this is going to improve the operation of the protocol as a whole. So take the TCP/IP in the future and into a higher level, because there are more features that's gonna be available for the IPv6. Okay, these are the major changes from the IPv4 to the IPv6. So there's more addresses that's gonna be available. Okay, hierarchical address space, it's going to be more structured. Hierarchical assignment of unicast addresses, better support for non-unicast addressing. Okay, so from these features alone, there were really major changes and additions from the IPv4, because these features are not available in the, or if not available, are supported less. Okay, less support for this kind of features. Auto configuration and renumbering, new datagram format. Okay, because there are more octets that's going to be addressed, so there's new datagram format. Support for quality of service. From the IP address alone, there's already QoS. Okay, so better support also for security, updated fragmentation and reassembly procedures, modernization routing support, uh, which means it's like future ready. Okay, transition capabilities. Okay, and how are we going to transition? Okay, this is usually the question. What's gonna happen to IPv4 if we go to IPv6? Okay, what's gonna happen is IPv4 is not gonna disappear right away. It has to transition. So it means it has to coexist with IPv6 for a certain time. Transition from IPv4 to IPv6 cannot happen suddenly. It takes time before every system in the internet can move from IPv4 to IPv6. So there are two fundamental strategies of how to do that. The first one is dual stack. Okay, so in the dual stack, a station must run IPv4 and IPv6 at the same time until all the internet uses IPv6. Okay, until such time IPv4 is not used anymore, or has all the computers around the world have been changed to IPv6. Okay, so that's the time that this is the period where we use the dual stack. This is the first way of doing that. So as you can see here, you have upper layers. Remember the OSI layers. Okay, so these are, you just picture it out as the upper layers. Now under that is there's an underlying LAN and WAN technology where it will actually support the IPv6 and the IPv4 all at the same time. Okay, so while IT administrators are still in the process of converting their IPv4s to IPv6. Okay, so IPv4 will not go away as in just in a shorter time. I'm sure it's gonna take a long time. Okay, but with this kind of situation, we are ready for a transition. The next one is, first one is dual stack. The next one is tunneling. Okay, tunneling, this term, I'm sure you're aware of tunneling, or if you're familiar with those ones who usually use who download files from the internet. Some actually use tunneling procedures or techniques for them to be able to download their files. Okay, so in tunneling, in from IPv4 to IPv6, it uses example is used when two computers using IPv6 wants to communicate with each other, and the packet must pass through a region that uses IPv4. So that means a certain area, even if one computer from one side of the world uses IPv6 and the other computer from the other side of the world is also using IPv6, it's inevitable that it's going to, or there really is a possibility that it's going to pass through a route or routes, okay, that uses IP, still the IPv4, okay. So tunneling makes it possible for this to happen, okay, because with tunneling from IPv6, it will carry over inside, okay, the payload. These are the information and the header and everything else, okay. If you can still remember a header which contains so many information about the packet or the data, okay, it is carried and is wrapped through protocols, okay, and then it goes under the tunnel, okay. So under the tunnel also comes with it, it will be wrapped from the with the IPv6 header. It's going to be wrapped around with an IPv4 header, so that even if it passes through a network where IPv4 technology is still being used and IPv6 is not, it will still it can still work, okay. The packet can still pass through the network or through that route, okay. So that is tunneling, okay. Another in addition to that, okay, this is okay. So those are the two, okay. So how is head the header IPv6 or IPv4 is translated vice versa, okay. So necessary when the majority of the internet has moved to IPv6, but some systems still use IPv4. That is why header translation is very important, so that even if IPv6 is here but IPv6 is still present also, there is an interchangeable translation. So the header of the IPv6 packet is now converted to IPv4 header, so that it can work to, even if it's in IPv6, it will still work on IPv4 area, okay, IPv4 area. So as you can notice here on the screen, IPv6 host, which contains the header and the payload, okay, the packet. This is the IPv6 region. When it passes through a region where there's IPv4 only, it's going to be translated this part before it reaches here. Header translation done here. Usually this is done in the router, okay. This is done in the router. So it translates now from the IPv6 to IPv4, so that even IPv4 computers or terminals would be able to read and write on the packets, and vice versa, IPv4 to IPv6 also. So it passes through the translation again, going back to IPv6, okay. So that's it. That's how in IPv6 is going to work for us as we transition from IPv4. Hopefully you learned from this, and basically on our end, okay, on our end, we will still be using IPv4, okay, for the time being, okay. But maybe in your future courses, okay, you'll be using IPv6 more, okay, more often, because we need to master first the techniques and some skills you need to brush through with the IPv4, because most of these skills are also applicable for IPv6. Okay, so we're going to do a lot more subnetting, no? Subnetting in IPv4. Okay, subnetting a subnet, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is just going to introduce you to what really IPv6, to give you an expectations of how will IPv6 work for us. Okay, so thank you guys for listening, and Have a nice day. Bye.